Hey guys, tonight we're heading north. Far north. We're going to a place where the temperature drops so low that your breath turns to ice crystals before it leaves your lips, and where the promise of gold drove 100,000 people to do things that defy sanity. Forget the movies where the prospector pans a river for 5 minutes and pulls out a nugget the size of a chicken egg. We're diving into the mud, the starvation, the avalanches, and the crushing loneliness of the Klondike Gold Rush. So before you get comfortable under your warm duvet, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these long, quiet walks into the freezing past. And let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what the temperature is right now. It's always grounding to know who is out there in the dark with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that white noise hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on a dock, but the ground beneath your feet doesn't feel stable. It's swaying, or maybe you are. You've just stepped off a steamship that was packed tighter than a cattle car, filled with men who smelled of coal smoke, old sweat, and desperation. The air hitting your face isn't fresh sea air, it's biting, damp, and smells of tidal mud and wet pine. Welcome to Skagway, Alaska. The year is 1897. You look around, and the first thing you realize is that you have made a terrible mistake. You expected a town. What you see is a chaotic explosion of mud and canvas. Tents are pitched everywhere, on the beach, in the middle of the street, on top of tree stumps. There are thousands of people, a churning mass of humanity shouting, arguing, and dragging crates through sludge that comes up to their ankles. You aren't a rugged outdoorsman, you aren't a survival expert, you are a clerk from Seattle. You spent your life sitting at a desk, tallying ledgers in a warm room with a pot of coffee nearby. But then the headlines came, gold. Gold in the Klondike. And like everyone else, you sold everything. Your furniture, your pocket watch, your comfortable life. You bought a ticket north, convinced that you would walk into the wilderness and walk out a king. Now, standing in the drizzle with a cheap coat that is already soaking through, you realize the wilderness doesn't care about your dreams. It barely tolerates your existence. You step off the planking of the dock, and your boot sinks into the mud with a wet, sucking sound. This isn't just dirt, it's a slurry of horse manure, sawdust, and glacial silt. It coats everything. You drag your kit bag onto the shore. It's heavy, but it's nothing compared to what you still have to buy. The Canadian authorities, the Mounties, have set a rule. A brutal, non-negotiable rule. No one enters the Yukon without 1 ton of supplies. 2,000 pounds of food, tools, and gear. They aren't doing it to be cruel. They're doing it because they're tired of digging shallow graves for people who thought they could survive an Arctic winter with a sandwich and a shovel. 2,000 pounds. You try to visualize it. It's a mountain. You make your way toward the main street, which is really just a wider strip of mud lined with hastily built wooden shacks. The noise is overwhelming. Hammers banging, saws grinding, dogs barking. Hundreds of dogs, huskies and malamutes chained up and howling. Vendors are screaming prices that make your head spin. A dozen eggs costs $1. A single onion is worth its weight in silver. You find a general store, a canvas-roofed structure that smells of curing bacon and kerosene. Inside, it is pandemonium. Men are climbing over each other to get to the counter. "I need flour," one man shouts. £400. "Sold out," the clerk yells back, not even looking up. "Try the next shipment on Tuesday." You manage to squeeze to the front. You have a list, copied from a newspaper. You need flour, bacon, beans, sugar, coffee, dried fruit. You need a heavy wool coat, a tent, a stove, mining pans, a pickaxe, a shovel. The clerk looks at you with bloodshot eyes. He looks exhausted, like he hasn't slept in a week. "You got cash?" he asks. "Gold dust? We don't take credit." "Cash," you say, pulling out a roll of bills. It's your life savings. You start buying. It takes hours. You haggle for sacks of flour that are leaking white dust. You fight another man for the last slab of salt pork. You buy a pair of boots that look sturdy but feel stiff as iron. By the time you're done, your pile of goods is sitting on the boardwalk outside. It is massive. Sacks of flour, crates of tinned beef, rolls of canvas. It looks impossible. How are you supposed to move this? You are one person. You weigh 160 pounds. This pile weighs 20 times that. "Need a packer?" a voice asks. You turn. A man is leaning against a post, chewing on a toothpick. He looks rough, his face weathered like old leather. "How much?" you ask. 50 cents a pound to the scales," he says. You do the math. That would bankrupt you before you even leave town. I'll carry it myself, you say. The man laughs. It's a dry rattling sound. Good luck, Chichako, he says. Chichako, the local word for a newcomer. A tenderfoot. Someone who doesn't know which way the wind blows. You look at your pile, you look at the trailhead at the edge of town. It disappears into the trees winding up toward the mountains. The Chilkoot Trail. The Golden Stairs. You grab a 50-pound sack of flour, you hoist it onto your shoulder. It feels heavy, digging into your collarbone. You take a step, then another. You have to move this entire pile, 50 pounds at a time, 30 miles over a mountain pass covered in ice. You calculate it in your head. To move a ton of gear 10 miles, walking back and forth with 50 pounds on your back, you will actually walk nearly 800 miles. You take another step, the mud sucks at your boot. The rain turns to sleet, stinging your cheeks. You haven't even left the town yet, and your back is already aching. You look up at the peaks looming over Skagway, shrouded in mist. They look cold. They look indifferent. You tighten your grip on the flour sack. You didn't come here to turn back. You came here to get rich. But as the cold damp seeps through your coat, a quiet voice in the back of your head whispers the truth. You just came here to survive, and the first night hasn't even begun. Night in Skagway doesn't fall gently. It collapses. The grey light of the afternoon simply fades into a murky, impenetrable blackness, broken only by the flickering of kerosene lamps and the glow of cook fires that dot the muddy beach like fireflies in a swamp. The noise changes, shifting from the roar of commerce to the roar of vice. Saloon pianos start clinking out tunes, tinny and discordant. Drunken shouting echoes off the wooden facades. Gunshots, sharp, sudden cracks, ring out periodically, followed by silence or laughter, and you can't tell which is worse. You have pitched your tent on a patch of ground that's only slightly less muddy than the rest. It's a cheap canvas A-frame, and it smells of mildew. You're sitting on your crate of beans, trying to dry your socks over a small fire you've built from driftwood. The wood is salty and damp, hissing and popping, sending stinging smoke into your eyes. You're exhausted. Your shoulders ache from just moving your supplies from the store to this campsite, a distance of maybe 300 yards, and you have 30 miles to go. A man stumbles past your tent, trips over your guy line, and falls face first into the mud. He lies there for a moment, groaning, then pushes himself up. He's coated in slime. "Watch where you put your house," he slurs, glaring at you with bleary eyes. He smells of cheap whiskey and unwashed wool. "Sorry," you mutter, though you didn't do anything wrong. In Skagway, apologies are a survival mechanism. The town is run by a conman named Soapy Smith and his gang. Law enforcement is a rumour. If you get into a fight here, nobody's coming to save you. You eat a dinner of cold beans straight from the can because you're too tired to cook. They taste metallic and bland. You wash it down with water you boiled from a nearby stream, hoping the heat killed whatever was living in it. Sleep is fitful. The ground is hard and lumpy, sucking the heat right out of your body through the thin canvas floor. You hear arguments, bottles breaking, dogs fighting. At one point you hear a woman screaming, a terrifying, jagged sound that cuts through the night. It stops abruptly. You lie there, heart hammering, wondering if you should check, but you don't. You stay in your tent. Cowardice, you tell yourself, is just prudence in a lawless town. Morning comes with a layer of frost on the inside of your tent. You wake up stiff, your breath puffing in the damp air. You force yourself to move, to boil coffee, to pack up the 50 pounds you will carry today. You're starting the relay, the method every stampeder uses. You carry a load up the trail for a mile, dump it in a cache, and walk back empty-handed to get the next load. You do this over and over until your entire ton of gear is moved 1 mile. Then you move camp and start again. You shoulder a sack of flour and a box of ammunition. It's awkward. The box digs into your spine. You step onto the trail. The Chilkoot Trail starts deceptively. It winds through the forest along the Taya River. The trees are tall, dripping with moss. It looks almost scenic until you look down. The trail is a quagmire. Thousands of boots, thousands of hooves, have churned the earth into a thick black paste that is knee-deep in places. You join the line. It's an endless snake of humanity. Men, mostly, but some women too, all bent double under towering packs. There are horses, poor beasts with ribs showing, their eyes rolling in panic as they struggle for footing. You walk. Every step is a battle. Your boot sinks, the mud grabs it, and you have to yank it free with a wet schloop sound. Then you plant it again. Sink, pull, step. Sink, pull, step. The smell is atrocious. It's not just mud, it's manure. Thousands of horses and mules are working this trail, and when they die, which they do often, they are just pushed to the side. You pass the carcass of a horse half buried in the muck, its belly bloated. Flies buzz around it despite the cold. No one looks at it. It's just a landmark now. Turn left at the Dead Bay Mare. After a mile, your shoulders are screaming. The strap of your pack is cutting off circulation to your arms. You reach a flat spot, a designated cache point. You drop your load onto a pile of your other gear. You mark it with a strip of red cloth so you can find it again in the sea of identical sacks. Then you turn around and walk back. The walk back is the rest. You're empty-handed, but you are walking through the same mud. You pass the men coming up. You see their faces. They look vacant, eyes fixed on the heels of the man in front of them. Nobody talks. Talking takes breath. Make way, someone shouts behind you. You step into the brush as a pack train of mules comes barreling down. The drivers are cursing, whipping the animals. One mule stumbles, its leg going deep into a root hole. You hear a snap. The mule screams, a horrible high-pitched sound. The driver doesn't hesitate. He pulls a revolver and shoots the mule in the head. The animal drops. The driver starts unbuckling the load immediately. "Get moving," he yells at the other mules. You stare. The brutality of it is casual, efficient. The mule was just a tool that broke. You keep walking, you get back to your main stash, grab another load, this time a crate of tinned peaches and a shovel, and start the climb again. You do this 4 times that day. By the time evening falls, you have moved your gear 1 mile. 1 mile, you have 29 to go. You set up your tent in the mud. You don't bother with a fire. You eat hardtack, dry, rock-hard biscuits, and drink water. Your hands are blistered. Your feet are swollen inside your boots. You take your boots off to check them, and the smell makes you gag. Your socks are soaked with sweat and mud water. Your skin is pale and wrinkled like a dead fish. Trenchfoot, the man camping next to you says. He's sitting on a log rubbing grease into his own feet. Keep 'em dry, or the skin rots off. You dry your feet as best you can with a dirty rag. You put on your spare pair of dry socks. It feels like heaven. You lie down. You're so tired your bones vibrate. You close your eyes, and all you can see is the mud. The black, churning mud. You think about the office in Seattle. The clean paper, the ink, the ticking clock. It feels like a different planet. "Why did I come?" you whisper to the canvas roof. But you know why. You came for the gold. The gold that is sitting in the creek beds of the Yukon, just waiting to be picked up. The gold that will make you rich, that will make you someone. You drift off to sleep dreaming of yellow nuggets. You don't know it yet, but the mud is the easy part. Ahead lies the canyon, and beyond that the scales, and beyond that the golden stairs, and the winter is watching you, waiting for you to make a mistake. The days start to bleed together. You wake up, you eat cold beans, you walk, you carry, you walk back. The scenery changes slowly, agonizingly. The forest thins out, the trail gets steeper, the mud turns into rocks, sharp, jagged shale that cuts through the soles of your boots. You reach the Canyon City camp. It's a tent city clinging to the walls of a river gorge. The wind funnels through here, screaming constantly. It tears at the tent flaps, knocks over cooking pots. You can't escape it. You're lighter now, not because you've eaten your supplies, but because you've started shedding the unnecessary. The books you brought to read, left on a rock. The heavy cast iron skillet, traded for a lighter tin pan. The mirror, smashed and abandoned. You don't want to see your face anyway. You've lost weight. Your beard is patchy and matted. Your eyes have that 1,000-yard stare you saw on the dock. You meet people on the trail. Everyone has a story, and every story is desperate. There's a teacher from Iowa who sold his schoolhouse, a farmer from Oregon who left his crops to rot, a boy, barely 18, who ran away from home with his father's rifle. One night, you share a fire with a man named Sven. He's a giant, a Swede with hands like shovels. He's carrying a piano. A piano, you ask, staring at the massive crate he's hauling on a sled he drags over the rocks. For the dance halls in Dawson, Sven grunts. They pay big money for music. He's moving a piano over a mountain range. You can't decide if he's a genius or a lunatic. Probably both. The next day, you reach Pleasant Camp. The name is a cruel joke. It's a bog. The rain has turned to snow, a wet, heavy slush that soaks you to the bone. You are constantly wet. Your wool coat weighs 50 pounds on its own. You start to see the mental toll. Men sit by the trail, weeping openly. Others have simply stopped, sitting on their packs, staring at nothing. They've given up. They will turn back tomorrow, leaving their dreams in the mud. Don't stop, you tell yourself. Just one more load. You reach Sheep Camp. This is the last stop before the ascent, before the pass. The camp is a sprawling mess of humanity huddled at the base of the mountains. Above you, the peaks rise sheer and white, disappearing into the clouds. The air is different here, thinner, cleaner, but colder. The temperature drops at night to well below freezing. Your breath freezes in your moustache. Your water bucket turns into a solid block of ice. You need wood. There are no trees here, just scrub brush. You have to buy wood from packers coming down, or burn your own packing crates. You see men burning their spare clothes just to boil coffee, and then you see it. The clouds lift for a moment, revealing the Chilkoot Pass. It looks like a wall, a vertical white scar cutting through the mountains, and on that wall, a black line. It looks like a trail of ants. It's people, thousands of them, climbing single file up a slope that looks impossibly steep. The golden stairs, a man next to you whispers. He sounds terrified. The stairs aren't stairs. They are steps kicked into the ice and snow by the thousands of boots that came before you. There are 1,500 steps. They rise 1,000 feet in half a mile. You have to climb that, with 50 pounds on your back, again and again and again. To move your ton of gear, you will have to climb that ice wall 40 times. You sit down on your crate of beans. You feel a wave of nausea. It's impossible. No human can do that. But then you look at the line. It's moving. Slowly. Rhythmically. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. It's a machine made of flesh and will. We go at dawn, Sven says, appearing beside you. He's left the piano at the base. Even he can't carry a piano up that. He's breaking it down, carrying the pieces. At dawn, you agree. That night you eat a double ration of bacon. You need the fat. You check your boots. You wrap rags around them for grip. You sharpen your walking stick. You try to sleep, but the sound of the wind coming off the pass is like a roar. It sounds hungry. Morning comes. It's minus 20 degrees. The air burns your lungs. You pack your first load, 60 pounds this time. You want to get it done. You walk to the base of the stairs. The scales, they call this area, because the packers weigh their loads here. They charge $1 a pound to carry gear up. You don't have $1 a pound. You have your legs. You step into the line. The person in front of you is a woman. She's wearing a long skirt that drags in the snow, heavy men's boots, and a pack that looks bigger than she is. She doesn't look back. She just takes a step. You take a step. Your boot finds the icy indentation. You push up. Your pack drags you backward. You lean forward, putting your hands on your knees, driving yourself up. Step, pause, step, pause. The pace is hypnotic. The line moves at the speed of the slowest climber. You can't stop. If you stop, the person behind you will yell or push you. If you step out of line, you lose your place. You have to slide all the way down to the bottom and start over. It takes 6 hours to climb. 6 hours of staring at the heels of the woman in front of you. The wind hits you halfway up. It tries to peel you off the mountain. You cling to the ice, burying your face in your coat. The cold is absolute. It finds the gaps in your mittens. It numbs your nose. You hear a shout from above. Rock. A loose stone tumbles down the line. People dodge, but they can't move far. It hits a man 3 places below you. He grunts and falls. He slides, tumbling down the slope, picking up speed. He hits the bottom, a small black dot in the snow. The line doesn't stop. You keep climbing. You have to. You reach the summit. The wind here is ferocious. You stumble over the crest into a flat, windswept plateau. This is the border. Canada. A Mountie stands there wrapped in buffalo furs, looking like a statue. A Canadian flag snaps in the gale. "Dump it there," he shouts over the wind, pointing to a growing pile of supplies. You drop your pack. Your shoulders scream in relief. You feel light, like you could float away. But you can't stay. You have to go back down. You turn and look at the descent. There is no trail down. You just slide. You sit on your shovel or your coat and push off. You slide down the mountain, picking up speed, snow spraying in your face. It takes 5 minutes to get down. 5 minutes down, 6 hours up. You reach the bottom. You grab the next load. Again, you whisper. You do this for weeks. You become a machine. You stop thinking. You stop feeling. You just climb. You sleep in a snow cave at the base. You eat frozen beans. You watch men break. You watch them sit down in the snow and refuse to get up, but you get up. And one day you carry the last sack, the last 50 pounds. You stand at the summit looking north. Behind you is the coast, the ocean, the world you knew. Ahead is the interior, a vast white emptiness of frozen lakes and twisted rivers. You have made it over the wall, but you aren't safe. You're just trapped on the other side. The summit of Chilkoot Pass isn't a victory line, it's a frozen purgatory. You stand there, lungs heaving, sweat freezing instantly on your skin. The wind is relentless, a physical force that tries to push you back down the mountain you just spent weeks conquering. The Canadian Mountie, a man named Sergeant Green, eyes your pile of supplies. "Is that all of it?" he shouts over the gale. You nod, too exhausted to speak. "Move it out," he orders. "Storm coming." Always a storm coming. You drag your gear a few hundred yards past the border post to Lake Lindeman. It's frozen solid, a vast sheet of white stretching into the distance. This is the headwaters of the Yukon River. From here, you have to build a boat. Yes, build a boat. There are no shipyards here, no lumber mills, just trees. Ancient, stunted spruce trees clinging to the rocky shores. You have to cut them down, saw them into planks, and build a vessel capable of carrying you and your ton of gear 500 miles down a river known for rapids that crush canoes like eggshells. You set up your tent on the ice. It's crowded. Thousands of other stampeders are here, a tent city on a frozen lake. The sound of axes ringing against frozen wood is constant, a rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack that echoes off the mountains. You aren't a carpenter. You're a clerk. You know how to file papers, not how to caulk a seam. But you have no choice. You find a grove of trees a mile away. You drag your sled there. You swing your axe. The wood is frozen, hard as stone. Every impact jars your arms. Blisters form, pop, and bleed into your gloves. It takes you 3 days to fell enough trees. Then comes the hard part, whipsawing. You build a platform. You roll a log onto it. You stand on top, and Sven, who has joined forces with you because moving a piano requires friends, stands below. You push and pull a 6-foot saw blade through the log. It is grueling. Sawdust rains down on Sven, coating him like breadcrumbs. Your back screams. The saw binds, sticks, jumps. You argue. You curse. You hate the wood. You hate the saw. You hate Sven. But slowly planks appear. Rough, uneven greenwood planks. You build your boat. It looks more like a coffin than a ship. You use oakum and pitch to seal the seams, melting the pitch over a fire that struggles to stay lit in the wind. You name it the Hope. It's a stupid name, but you're too tired to be creative. The ice begins to rot. It turns grey, then black. Water pools on the surface. Spring is coming to the high country. The break-up, everyone whispers, the moment the ice shatters and the river opens. One morning, a sound like a cannon shot wakes you. You run out of the tent. A crack has appeared in the lake, running from shore to shore. The water is churning. "Launch!" someone screams. It's madness. Men are dragging their boats across the remaining ice, shoving them into the open leads of water. You and Sven load the Hope. The piano goes in the centre, acting as ballast. Your flour, your beans, your tent, it all gets piled in. The boat rides low, dangerously low. The water is inches from the gunwale. You push off. The current grabs you. It's fast, cold, and powerful. You are floating. For the first time in months you aren't walking. It feels miraculous. The landscape slides by. Mountains, forests, glaciers. It's beautiful. But the river is a beast. It has teeth. "Miles Canyon ahead!" Sven shouts from the bow. Miles Canyon. The bottleneck. The river is squeezed between vertical basalt walls, accelerating into a frenzy of white water and whirlpools. The Mounties tried to stop people from running it, but the stampeders ignored them. Too much gold waiting. You hear the roar before you see it, a dull, continuous thunder. "Center! Stay center!" you yell, gripping the rudder. The current sucks you in. The walls rise up, blocking the sun. The water turns white. The boat bucks like a wild horse. Spray soaks you, freezing instantly. You see another boat ahead of you, a raft made of logs. It hits a standing wave, flips, and disintegrates. Men and supplies are tossed into the churn. You don't have time to help. You're fighting for your own life. A whirlpool spins you. The piano shifts. The boat lists. Lean! Sven roars, throwing his weight to the high side. You lean. The boat corrects, slamming back down. You shoot through the canyon, riding the crest of the rapids, and then you are out. The river widens, the water slows. You are alive. You drift past the wreckage of the raft. A crate of whiskey bobs in the eddy. No sign of the men. You don't stop. You can't stop. The current is carrying you north, deeper into the wild. The river journey takes weeks. You pass through lakes that are like inland seas, where storms can blow up in minutes, swamping boats. You fight mosquitoes, clouds of them, thick enough to inhale. They bite every inch of exposed skin, driving men mad. You wear a net over your head, but they find ways in. You run out of fresh food. You're back to beans and bacon. Scurvy starts to set in. Your gums bleed when you brush your teeth. Your joints ache. You crave an orange so badly you dream about it. One night, you camp on a sandbar. You're sitting by the fire, picking lice out of your shirt when a stranger paddles up in a canoe. He looks native, First Nations. He has a rifle across his knees. Dawson? He asks. Yeah, you say. How far? 2 days, he says, if the river doesn't kill you. He throws you a fish, a fresh silver salmon. Eat, he says. You look like death. You roast the fish over the fire. It is the best thing you have ever tasted. The fat runs down your chin. You feel energy returning to your limbs. 2 days. You're almost there. You get back in the boat. The river widens, slows, the landscape flattens, and then you see it. Dawson City, the Paris of the North. It looks like a soars on the landscape, a sprawl of mud, tents and log cabins clinging to the mud flats where the Klondike River meets the Yukon. Smoke hangs over it in a brown cloud. You beach your boat. You step onto the shore. The mud is ankle-deep, black and stinking. You have made it. You walked over a mountain. You built a boat. You survived the rapids. You are here. But as you walk into the town, pushing past men who look as wild and starving as you realize the truth. The creeks have all been staked. The good ground is gone. The gold belongs to the men who got here a year ago. You are late. You stand in the middle of the street surrounded by the noise of saloons and gambling halls. You have a ton of supplies, a piano and $10 in your pocket. You aren't going to be a miner. Sven looks at you. He looks at the piano. We sell it, he says. We sell the supplies. We open a saloon. You laugh. It's a hysterical, broken sound. You didn't come here to mine gold. You came here to mine the miners, and that, you realize as the snow begins to fall again, is how you survive the Klondike. Dawson City is not a settlement. It is a fever dream built on permafrost. The main street is a river of sludge, where dogs, horses and men fight for the right of way. The buildings are hasty constructions of green wood that warp as they dry, leaving gaps the wind whistles through. But inside those shacks, fortunes are changing hands every minute. You and Sven sell the piano for $3,000. Gold dust. The buyer, a saloon owner named Diamond Tooth Gertie, weighs the dust out on a brass scale. She pours the glittering sand from a leather poke, and you stare at it. It's real. You sell your flour for 10 times what you paid, your bacon for 20. You are rich, relatively speaking. But you're also homeless in a town where a bunk in a shared room costs an ounce of gold a night. You decide to build, not a mine, but a cabin. You find a patch of swampy ground on the outskirts of town. You fell trees, chinking the logs with moss. It's small, dark, and smells of pine resin, but it's yours. The winter comes early in Dawson. By October, the river freezes. The sun starts to disappear. The long dark sets in. This isn't the cold of the trail. This is interior cold. -50, -60. At 60 below, kerosene turns to jelly. Trees explode as their sap freezes. If you breathe too deeply, your lungs can hemorrhage. You spend your days inside, feeding the stove. Wood is scarce. It costs $40 a cord. You burn everything. Old crates, broken sleds, even driftwood you drag up from the frozen river. The town goes mad. Cabin fever. Men start talking to themselves. Fights break out over nothing. A card game ends in a shooting because someone coughed too loudly. You work in a saloon dealing faro. It's a mindless job, but it's warm. You watch the miners come in, the kings of the El Dorado. They wear parkas made of marten fur and throw nuggets onto the table like gravel. They are the lucky ones. But for every king, there are 100 ghosts. Men who staked claims on worthless creeks. Men who are digging through frozen gravel 12 hours a day, burning fires to thaw the ground inch by inch, only to find nothing but dirt. They come into the saloon, their faces grey with scurvy and exhaustion. They drink cheap whiskey that burns like acid. They gamble away their last dust, hoping for a miracle. You serve them. You take their money. You survive. One night, a man stumbles in. He looks familiar. It's the teacher from Iowa you met on the trail. He's lost 50 pounds. His hands are wrapped in filthy rags. Did you find it, you ask? He looks at you with dead eyes. I found fool's gold, he whispers. Iron pyrite, tons of it. I thought I was rich. I dug for 3 months. He orders a drink. He pays with a silver ring, his wedding band. I'm going home, he says, if I can walk out. You watch him drink. You feel a pang of guilt, sharp and sudden. You're profiting from their misery. You're a parasite on their dreams. But then you look outside. The aurora borealis is dancing over the mountains, green and purple curtains of light shimmering in the black sky. It is beautiful. It is indifferent. The land doesn't care if you get rich or if you die. It just exists. You realize that the gold rush isn't about gold. It's about the test. The mountains, the river, the cold. They strip you down. They take away your pretenses, your comforts, your lies. They leave you with only what is real. Spring comes again, the ice breaks. The first steamers arrive from the south, bringing fresh eggs, newspapers and champagne. You stand on the dock watching the new crop of stampeders pour off the boats. They look clean, eager, soft. They have no idea what is waiting for them. You touch the pocket of your coat. You have a ticket home, first class. You aren't leaving with a fortune in nuggets. You didn't find the mother lode, but you survived. You walked the trail. You built the boat. You endured the dark. Sven decides to stay. He likes the chaos. He likes the cold. See you in the funny papers, he says, slapping you on the back. You board the ship. The whistle blows. As the steamer pulls away, churning the muddy water of the Yukon, you look back at Dawson City. It looks small, fragile against the vastness of the wilderness. You turn your face to the south, to warmth, to rain that doesn't freeze, to a life where you don't have to fight for every breath. You survive the Klondike, and as you close your eyes listening to the rhythmic thrum of the engine, you know that you will never be cold again. You wake up, but you don't open your eyes, not yet. You lie perfectly still under your pile of blankets, 2 wool ones, a buffalo robe, and a heavy canvas tarp you threw on top for good measure. You are conducting a mental inventory of your body. Can you feel your toes? Yes, a dull throb. Good. Can you feel your nose? It feels stiff, cold as marble. You reach up a hand from under the covers to touch it, and the air in the cabin bites your fingers like a wild animal. It is the long dark. It is January in the Yukon, and the sun hasn't properly risen in weeks. It just skirts the horizon for a few hours of grey twilight before plunging you back into an obsidian night that feels heavy, physical, suffocating. You force yourself to sit up. Your breath creates a thick white cloud that hangs in the stagnant air. The moisture from your exhalations has frozen on the blankets near your face, forming a crust of white rime. You brush it off, the ice crystals scattering like diamond dust. The cabin is silent. Not the peaceful silence of a library, but the dangerous silence of deep cold. If the stove isn't ticking or popping, it means the fire is low, and if the fire is low, you are in trouble. You swing your legs out of the bunk. The floor is made of split logs, flat side up, but they are warped and uneven. The cold seeping up through the floorboards is aggressive. It radiates from the permafrost beneath the cabin, a permanent block of ice that goes down hundreds of feet. You shove your feet into your boots without putting them on all the way. The leather is frozen stiff and needs to be warmed before it will bend. You shuffle to the stove. It's a Yukon stove, a simple sheet iron box that you paid a king's ransom for in Skagway. It is the god of this house. You open the door. A few red eyes of coal stare back at you from the ash. You feed it kindling. Splinters of dry spruce you spent hours shaving yesterday. The wood catches with a hungry hiss. You add larger pieces, then a precious chunk of coal. As the metal heats up, it starts to tick. Tink, tink, tink. It's the only sound in the world. You look around your domain. The cabin is 10 feet by 12 feet. The walls are raw logs chinked with moss and mud. The moss has frozen, turning into a rock-hard seal. On the north wall, the frost has crept inside. It coats the nail heads in white fuzz. It grows in fern-like patterns along the cracks. You're living inside a geode. You aren't alone, of course. Sven is in the top bunk. He's snoring softly, a rhythmic rasp. You resent him for sleeping. You resent him for being warm. Cabin fever isn't just boredom. It's a slow-boiling rage directed at the only other human being within 10 miles. You hate the way he chews. You hate the way he breathes. You hate that he wears his socks to bed. You shake the thought away. Sven is your partner. Without him, you'd go mad from the isolation. Or you'd freeze when you got sick. You need him. You go to the water bucket. It has a lid of ice an inch thick. You grab the iron ladle and smash it. Crack. You dip out water to make coffee. The coffee is weak. You're rationing the grounds, reusing them until the liquid is barely brown. But it's hot. You hold the tin cup with both hands, letting the heat bleed into your palms. You walk to the window. It's not glass. Glass would shatter in this cold. It's a piece of oiled parchment stretched over a frame. It lets in a murky yellow light but blocks the view. You scratch a tiny peephole in the frost on the parchment and look out. The world is blue. Deep, dark, twilight blue. The snow is piled 6 feet high against the cabin walls, insulating you, burying you. The spruce trees are bowed under the weight of the snow, looking like hunched old men. The thermometer nailed to the porch post reads -55. At -55, reality changes. If you throw a cup of water into the air, it explodes into steam and ice before it hits the ground. If you touch bare metal, your skin bonds to it instantly, and pulling away tears the flesh. Wood becomes brittle. Axe handles snap like glass. You have to go out. You have to get more wood. The stove eats wood like a starving beast. You pull on your parka, a heavy canvas coat lined with muskrat fur. You pull on your mittens, big leather gauntlets that go up to your elbows. You wrap a scarf around your face, leaving only a slit for your eyes. You open the door. The air hits you. It's not just cold, it's solid. It feels like walking into a wall. The moisture in your nose freezes instantly, making your nostrils stick together. You gasp, and the cold air burns your throat, searing the lungs. You trudge to the woodpile. It's getting low. You spent days in the fall dragging dead trees from the forest, sawing them, splitting them. You thought you had enough for 3 winters. It's January, and you are halfway through. You grab an armful of logs. They are frozen together. You have to kick them apart. The sound of your boot hitting the wood is sharp, a pistol crack in the silence. Sound travels strangely here. You can hear a dog bark in Dawson City miles away, as if it were next to you. You hurry back inside, your face already numb. You drop the wood by the stove, you strip off the layers, you stand by the fire, shivering as your body readjusts. This is the rhythm of your life now. Heat and cold, inside and outside. Sven sits up. He looks like a wild man. His beard is long, matted on one side from sleep. His eyes are bloodshot. Cold? He asks. Cold, you confirm. It is the only conversation you have had in 2 days. You put the coffee pot on the stove. You start to prepare breakfast. It will be beans. It is always beans. You have a sack of Alaska strawberries, dried beans. You soaked them overnight. Now you boil them with a chunk of salt pork that is mostly fat. The smell of boiling beans fills the small space. It is a smell you used to associate with camping, with fun. Now it smells like prison. You eat standing up. The cabin is small, but the temperature difference is extreme. Near the stove it is 70 degrees. In the corners it is below freezing. Your front is roasting, your back is shivering. You rotate like a pig on a spit. "We need to work the drift today," Sven says, scraping his bowl. You nod. The drift. The mine. You aren't just surviving. You're supposed to be mining. You have a claim on a creek a few miles out. You're digging a shaft straight down into the frozen earth, looking for the ancient riverbed where the gold lies. But you can't dig frozen ground. It's like hacking at concrete, so you have to thaw it. You build a fire at the bottom of the shaft, let it burn for hours to melt a few inches of dirt, then muck it out, then build another fire. It is slow, smoky, hellish work. "I'll go down first," you say. You gear up again. You walk to the shaft. It's a black hole in the snow, surrounded by a mound of excavated dirt that has frozen into a ring of stone. A windlass, a hand-cranked winch, stands over the hole with a bucket on a rope. You climb down the ladder. The shaft is 20 feet deep. As you descend, the air gets warmer. but also thicker. Smoke hangs at the bottom, heavy and sulphurous from yesterday's fire. It stings your eyes. You reach the bottom. It's a cramped, muddy circle. The ground is soft, thawed by the fire you burned last night. You grab a short-handled shovel and start filling the bucket. "Haul!" you yell. The rope tightens. The bucket goes up, swaying, dropping clods of mud on your head. You wait in the dark. This is the dream. This is what you sold your home for. Standing in a hole in the ground, breathing smoke, shoveling mud, hoping that the next bucket has a glitter of yellow. But so far there has been no yellow. Just black muck. Just grey gravel. Just the endless frozen earth. You shovel until your arms burn. You shovel until you can't stand up straight. You shovel until you forget who you are. And above you, a square of twilight blue sky watches, indifferent and cold. By February, the food situation shifts from monotonous to concerning. You aren't starving, not exactly. You have calories. You have sacks of flour that have hardened into cement-like blocks you have to smash with a hammer. You have beans. You have bacon that is so salty it makes your tongue peel. What you don't have is anything fresh. You haven't seen a green vegetable in 4 months. You haven't eaten a piece of fruit since Skagway, and your body knows it. It starts with the lethargy. You wake up tired, you go to sleep tired, your limbs feel heavy like they are filled with lead shot. You tell yourself it's just the work, the cold, the depression of the endless night. But then you notice the bruises. You bump your leg against the table leg, a minor tap, and a purple bloom spreads across your shin, dark and angry. It doesn't heal. A week later, it's still there, turning a sickly yellow-green. Then, your gums start to feel strange, spongy, sore. When you brush your teeth with a frayed twig and some salt, you spit pink. Scurvy. The word terrifies you. You've heard the stories in town. Men whose teeth fell out, men whose old wounds, scars from childhood, opened up and started bleeding again because their bodies lost the ability to hold themselves together. It is a slow dissolution. "We need acid," Sven says one night, looking at his own bleeding gums in a piece of polished tin he uses as a mirror. Citric acid, spruce tea. You've heard of this. The local First Nations people, the Klondike, drink tea made from spruce needles to ward off the sickness. It's full of vitamin C, though you don't know what a vitamin is yet. You just know it's medicine. You go out the next day and strip needles from the trees. You boil them into a pale green liquid. It tastes like turpentine and resin. It coats your mouth with a sticky film. You drink it anyway. You force Sven to drink it. It becomes a ritual. The morning coffee, the evening pine sap brew. But the hunger for variety is a mental torture. You find yourself fantasizing about food, not gold. Food. You dream of an orange, a bright, impossible orange. You can smell the zest. You can feel the juice bursting in your mouth. You wake up salivating, your stomach cramping with a phantom appetite. One day, you decide to bake bread. Real bread, not the unleavened bannock you usually fry in grease. You mix the flour with water and a precious pinch of sourdough starter you've kept alive in a jar near the stove. You knead the dough on the rough table. The smell of baking bread fills the cabin. It is the most beautiful smell in the world. It smells like home. It smells like safety. When it comes out of the stove, it's dense and heavy, but it has a crust. You slice it. Steam rises. You put a sliver of your dwindling butter supply on it. You take a bite, and you start to cry. You sit there, a grown man in a dirty parka, weeping over a piece of bread. It's humiliating. It's necessary. It breaks the numbness that has settled over your heart. But the food supply has another enemy. The cold. Your canned goods are freezing. The liquid inside the tins expands, bowing the metal tops outward. Sometimes they burst. You hear a pop in the night, and in the morning, you find a can of peaches has exploded, spraying frozen syrup all over the shelves. You have to chip the peaches off the wood and eat them like orange icicles. You don't waste a drop. The flour is another problem. The dampness of the cabin, the cycle of freezing and thawing makes it clump. You have to sift it through a piece of screen to get the weevils out. They are tiny black beetles that infest the grain. At first you pick them out carefully. Now, you just mash them into the dough. Protein is protein. And then there are the Alaska strawberries, the beans. They are the fuel of the Klondike, but they wreak havoc on your digestion. The cabin is small, the ventilation is poor. The result is a constant lingering odour of flatulence that mixes with the smell of unwashed bodies and wet wool. It is the smell of men living like animals. You start to hoard. You find yourself hiding a piece of dried beef in your pocket, not sharing it with Sven. You catch him eyeing the sugar sack suspiciously. The trust is eroding. Hunger makes you selfish. One afternoon, you are in town, Dawson City, to check for mail. You pass a restaurant. A sign in the window says, "Fresh eggs, $5 each." $5. That's a week's wages for a labourer back home, for one egg. You stand there, staring at the sign. You have gold dust in your pouch. You could buy it. You could go in there, order 2 fried eggs and eat them. But you can't. The gold is for the future. The gold is why you are suffering. Spending it on an egg feels like admitting defeat. You walk away. You go back to the cabin. You drink your spruce tea. You eat your beans. You feel your teeth wobble slightly when you chew. You tell yourself it's temporary. Spring will come. The supply boats will come. There will be oranges. There will be lettuce. But spring feels a million years away. Tonight you try to make a stew out of a squirrel you managed to snare. It's stringy and tough, with almost no fat. You boil the bones until they are soft. You suck the marrow out. It's gruesome. It's primal. You look at your hands. They are stained with soot and grease. Your fingernails are black and broken. You're turning into something else. The clerk from Seattle is dead. He died somewhere on the Chilkoot Trail. What's left is a creature that thinks only of heat and calories. A creature that can eat weevils and drink tree sap and call it dinner. You crawl into your bunk. Your stomach rumbles. A hollow, aching sound. You close your eyes and try to summon the image of the orange again. It's fading. All you can see is the snow. The work is the anchor. If you didn't work, you would lose your mind. The routine of the mineshaft gives shape to the shapeless days. You wake up. You eat. You go to the hole. The process of drift mining in permafrost is a paradox. You are surrounded by ice, but you work with fire. You climb down the ladder into the shaft. The air at the bottom is stagnant. You're 20 feet down, then another 30 feet horizontally into the drift, the tunnel you're carving along the bedrock. The first task of the day is firing. You haul wood down the shaft. This is wood you spent all yesterday chopping. You stack it against the face of the frozen dirt wall. You build a precise tight pile. It has to burn hot and directed. You light it. The smoke billows up, thick and choking. You scramble up the ladder as fast as you can, coughing, eyes streaming. You can't stay down there. The smoke will kill you in minutes. Carbon monoxide pools in the bottom of the shaft like invisible water. You stand at the top, listening to the fire roar below. You cover the shaft opening with a canvas tarp to trap the heat. Now you wait. You have 8 hours while the fire does the work. This is the downtime, the dangerous time. You go back to the cabin. You mend your socks. You sharpen your pick. You try not to look at Sven. When the fire burns out, you have to go back down. But you can't just jump in. The air is poison. You have to ventilate. You use a wind sail, a canvas tube rigged to catch the breeze above ground and funnel it down the shaft. You lower a candle on a rope. If the flame dies, the air is bad. If it burns, you can go down. You climb down. The heat at the bottom is intense. The walls are sweating. The ground, which was as hard as an iron this morning, is now a soft, steaming muck. It smells of ancient mud thawing out after 10,000 years. It smells of rot. You start digging. You have maybe 2 hours before the ground freezes again. You work frantically. You fill the bucket with the thawed gravel. Sven hauls it up. Crank, crank, crank. He dumps it on the dump pile, a growing mountain of dirt that will stay frozen until spring. You can't wash the gold out now. There's no liquid water. You just pile up the dirt and pray there's gold in it. This is the gambler's fallacy. You are moving tons of earth, breaking your back, burning your hands, risking cave-ins, all for a pile of dirt that might be worthless. You won't know until May. You're digging blind. The physical toll is immense. Your shoulders are in constant spasms. Your lower back feels like it's fused into a solid block of pain. You develop miner's crouch, walking stooped over even when you're above ground. The darkness of the drift is absolute. You work by the light of a single candle stuck into the mud wall. The flame flickers, casting wild, jumping shadows. Sometimes the shadows look like people. You start to hallucinate. You see movement in the corner of your eye. You hear whispers in the scrape of the shovel. "Did you say something?" you shout up the shaft. "What?" Sven yells back, his voice echoing. "Nothing." One day you hit a rock, a big boulder embedded in the gravel. You strike it with your pick. Sparks fly. A chip of stone flies off and hits you in the cheek, just below the eye. It cuts deep. Blood runs down your face, mixing with the mud and sweat. You wipe it away with a dirty sleeve. You don't stop. You can't stop. The ground is freezing up again. You can feel it hardening, resisting the shovel. You pry the boulder loose. Behind it, you see a layer of gravel that looks different. Darker. Heavier. "Pay dirt?" you whisper. You grab a handful. You bring it close to the candle. You can't tell. It's just mud. But it feels right. It has that gritty, sandy texture that the old-timers talk about. You fill the bucket. "Haul!" you scream, your voice cracking with a desperate hope. Sven hauls it up. You fill another, and another. You work until your pick bounces off the wall, ringing like a bell. The ground has frozen. You climb the ladder, your legs trembling. You collapse on the snow at the top, gasping for clean, cold air. You look at the dump pile. It's bigger today. "Think we hit it?" Sven asks. He's looking at the dirt like it's a lover. "Maybe," you say. "Maybe." You drag yourself back to the cabin. You're too tired to eat. You just drink water and fall into the bunk. But you can't sleep. Your muscles are twitching. Your mind is racing. Is the gold there? Is it under the ice? Or are you just digging a grave for your sanity? You close your eyes and you see the candle flame dancing in the dark. You hear the clink, clink, clink of the pick. It's a rhythm that has gotten into your heartbeat. You realise you're becoming part of the mine. You're turning into a mole, a creature of the dark. The sun is a memory. The only light that matters is the one that glitters in the pan. And you haven't even seen that light yet. The silence is the loudest thing you have ever heard. It is heavy, pressing against your eardrums like water pressure at the bottom of the ocean. It is March now, or maybe late February. You've lost track. The calendar you scratched into the log wall has become a mess of tally marks that don't seem to add up anymore. You're sitting at the table, staring at a knot in the wood. You've been staring at this knot for 20 minutes. It looks like a face. A screaming face. Sven is sharpening his knife. Scrape, scrape, scrape! The sound is driving you insane. Every stroke of the whetstone feels like it is happening inside your own skull. You grip the edge of the table, your knuckles white. You want to scream at him to stop. You want to throw the coffee pot at his head. This is cabin fever. The old-timers warned you about it. They said men go into the bush best friends and come out, if they come out at all, mortal enemies. You didn't believe them. You thought you were civilized. You thought you were rational. Now you understand. You're trapped in a box with another human being, breathing the same recycled air, smelling the same unwashed clothes, hearing the same stories repeated for the 100th time. "Stop it," you snap. Sven looks up, surprised. "Stop what?" "The noise. The scraping." He looks at the knife, then at you. His eyes are narrowed, suspicious. Paranoia has settled in him too. He thinks you're hiding gold. You think he's hoarding the sugar. Neither of you is right, but the truth doesn't matter in the dark. "I need a sharp knife," he says slowly, deliberately, "for the bacon." "Just stop," you say, standing up. "I'm going to town." "It's 40 below," he says. "I don't care." You gear up. The ritual of the parka, the scarf, the mittens. It takes 10 minutes just to get dressed to walk out the door. You step outside and the cold slaps you, cleansing and brutal. It clears the rage instantly, replacing it with the immediate need to conserve heat. The walk to Dawson is 3 miles along the frozen river. The snow is packed hard as concrete. The aurora is out again, swirling green and violent violet overhead. It lights the trail with a ghostly glow. You walk with your head down, watching your boots. Dawson City in the dead of winter is a study in contrasts. It is a hive of activity in a graveyard of ice. Smoke rises straight up from 1,000 chimneys, forming a brown smog layer that hangs over. The town trapping the smell of coal, wood smoke and human waste. You walk past the police barracks. The Mounties are out patrolling in buffalo coats. They are the only law here, and they are stretched thin. They mostly break up fights and stop people from freezing to death in the alleys. You head for the Monte Carlo saloon. You don't drink much. Whiskey is 50 cents a shot, and that's gold you don't want to spend. But you need the noise. You need to be around people who aren't Sven. The saloon is packed. The heat inside is staggering. A massive pot-bellied stove glows cherry red in the centre of the room. Men are crowded around it, steaming in their damp wool. The smell is a physical wall. Wet fur, tobacco, stale beer, and sweat. You push your way to the bar. You order a beer. It's lukewarm and flat, likely brewed in a bathtub in the back, but it's liquid. You look around. This is the hierarchy of the Klondike on display. At the far tables, the kings of the El Dorado sit. These are the men who struck it rich on Bonanza and El Dorado creeks. They are wearing clean shirts. They are drinking champagne that costs $20 a bottle. They have women on their arms, dancehall girls who charge $1 a minute just to talk. These men look loud, confident, immortal. Then there are the rest. The dreamers. The clerks like you. They stand at the edges nursing cheap drinks, watching the kings with a mixture of envy and hatred. Their faces are gaunt. Their clothes patched. They are waiting. Waiting for the spring clean-up. Waiting to see if their dirt piles have gold or just gravel. You spot a man you know, a baker from San Francisco named Miller. He looks terrible. His skin is grey, his eyes darting around the room. "Hey," you say, nodding to him. He jumps. "Oh, it's you." He clutches his drink. "Did you hear? About Jenkins?" "Jenkins?" "The fellow from the claim above mine, French Hill." Miller leans in, whispering, his breath sour. "Put a pistol in his mouth last night, pulled the trigger." You feel a cold chill that has nothing to do with the weather. "Why?" "Went bust," Miller says. "Dug a shaft 30 feet down. Hit bedrock. Nothing. Not a speck. He couldn't face the walk back." It's a common story. The Klondike suicide. The disappointment is a physical blow. You spend a year of your life savings, your physical health, all for a hole in the ground. "Did he find anything?" you ask. "Jenkins?" "Just dirt," Miller says. "Frozen dirt." You finish your beer. It tastes bitter now. You look at the kings at the high table. They are laughing, throwing gold dust onto the green baize of the faro table. One of them spills a glass of champagne. He laughs and orders another. That spilled glass cost more than your entire sled of supplies. The injustice of it burns. It's not about hard work. You work harder than anyone. It's about luck. It's about being in the right place 10 feet to the left or right of a pay streak. You leave the saloon. The noise is too much. The despair is contagious. You walk down Front Street. You pass a shop window. Inside, there are luxury goods on display brought in before the freeze. A silk dress, a box of cigars, a single shriveled apple. The price tag on the apple is $2. $2. You could buy a meal in Seattle for 10 cents. Here, an apple is a jewel. You stand there staring at the fruit. You have gold in your pouch. You could buy it. You could taste that sweetness, but you don't. You walk on. You pass a dance hall. Music spills out. A piano playing a ragtime tune. It sounds manic, forced. Inside, men are paying to dance with women they don't know, just to feel the touch of another human being who isn't a dirty miner. You realize that everyone here is starving. Not just for food, they are starving for home, for softness, for a world that isn't made of ice and greed. You turn back toward the river. The walk home is colder. The aurora has faded, leaving the sky black and empty. You reach the cabin. Smoke is curling from the chimney. Sven is still awake. You open the door. The heat hits you. Sven is sitting exactly where you left him. The knife is on the table. He's whittling a piece of wood now, carving a small chain. "You're back," he says. "I'm back. Get any news?" "Jenkins is dead," you say. "Suicide." Sven nods slowly. He doesn't look surprised. "Weak mind," he says. "The cold gets in the head." He tosses the wood shaving into the stove. "I made tea." He points to the pot. It's spruce tea. Again. "Thanks," you say. You pour a cup. You sit down opposite him. The irritation from earlier is gone, replaced by a dull camaraderie. You hate him, yes. But he is the only person in the world who knows what it's like to be in this room, right now. "We have to finish the crosscut tomorrow," Sven says. "The drift is getting long. We need to shore up the roof." "I know," you say. "If the roof comes down..." He trails off. "I know," you repeat. "If the roof comes down, you're buried alive." It happens every week on the creeks. A thaw, a shift in the permafrost, and the earth takes you back. You drink the tea. It tastes like pine and smoke. You climb into your bunk. You pull the heavy blankets up to your chin. You stare at the ceiling logs. You count the knots. 1 month, maybe 6 weeks. Then the sun returns. Then the water flows. Then you wash the dirt. Then you find out if you're a king or a ghost. You close your eyes. You dream of the apple in the window. It is red and shiny. You take a bite, but it turns to ash in your mouth. April arrives not with a bang, but with a drip. You're in the mine shaft 20 feet down when you hear it. Plip, plip. You freeze, pickaxe mid-swing. Water. In the dead of winter, the mine is dry because everything is frozen. Water means heat. Water means instability. You look up. The roof of the drift, usually a solid sheet of frozen mud, is glistening. A drop of water falls, hitting your cheek. It feels warm, shockingly warm compared to the air. "Sven!" you shout up the shaft. "Get the buckets! It's thawing!" This is the moment you have been working for, and the moment you have been dreading. The spring wash-up. The creeks are starting to flow. You can finally process the mountain of dirt you have spent 5 months digging. But it also means the mine is becoming a death trap. As the permafrost melts, the walls lose their structural integrity. They turn from concrete to pudding. You scramble up the ladder. Outside, the sun is actually warm. It's blinding. The snow is retreating, revealing patches of brown, dead grass. The creek, which has been a silent ribbon of ice, is gurgling. Water is running over the top of the ice sheet, carving channels. "We need to build the sluice boxes," Sven says, shielding his eyes. "Now." You abandon the mine. It's too dangerous to dig anymore. Now you become carpenters again. You take the planks you cut from the forest, the ones you didn't burn, and build a long wooden trough. It looks like a narrow ladder with slats across the bottom. These are the riffles. They catch the gold. Gold is heavy, 19 times heavier than water. When you wash the dirt through the box, the water carries the light gravel and sand away. The gold sinks and gets trapped behind the riffles. That's the theory. You set up the sluice box in the creek, using rocks to angle it just right. You build a dam to divert water into the top of the box. Then the work begins, the real work. You have a dump pile that is 20 feet high. Tons of dirt. You have to shovel every single pound of it into the sluice box. You shovel. Sven rakes the dirt in the box, keeping the water flowing, breaking up the clods. You work from dawn until dusk. Your back screams. Your hands blister, then callous, then bleed. You're moving a mountain with a spoon. The water is freezing. You're standing in it, knee-deep, wearing gumboots that leak. Your feet are perpetually numb. You stop feeling your toes around noon and don't feel them again until you're by the stove at night. And you don't look for gold. Not yet. If you stop to look, you lose time. You just shovel. You trust the box. Days pass. The pile shrinks. The creek rises, fed by the melting snow from the mountains. The noise of the water is constant, a roaring background to your labour. Other miners are doing the same. The valley is alive with activity. Smoke rises from 100 fires where men are thawing out their sluice runs. There is a frantic energy in the air. The clean-up is the judgment day. One evening, Sven stops raking. "Water's dropping," he says. "Dam's leaking." You run up to the dam. A log has shifted. Water is pouring around the side, bypassing your box. You jump in, wrestling the log back into place. The water is waist-deep here, icy and powerful. You slip, go under. The shock is instantaneous. You thrash, find your footing and shove the log home. You pack it with moss and mud. The flow returns to the box. You climb out, shivering violently. That was close. "Go warm up," Sven says. "I'll finish this load." You sit by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, watching the steam rise from your clothes. You're exhausted. You're broken. And then, the pile is gone. The last shovelful of dirt washes down the box. It is time. "Shut the gate," you say. Sven blocks the water flow. The sluice box drains. What's left in the bottom is a layer of black sand and gravel trapped behind the wooden slats. This is the concentrate. You carefully scoop it out into a gold pan. You take the pan to a tub of water. Sven watches, holding his breath. You start to pan. You swirl the water, washing away the lighter sand. The black sand remains. You keep swirling. And then you see it. A flash of yellow. Not a nugget. Not a rock. Dust. Flakes. Tiny flat specks of gold glittering against the black iron sand. "There," you whisper. Sven leans in. "Is that it?" "That's it." You keep washing. More flakes appear. A few small pickers. Pieces big enough to pick up with your fingers. You finish the pan. You pour the gold into a small leather pouch. You weigh it in your hand. It feels light. You do the math in your head. That was one pan. That pan represents maybe a ton of dirt. You process the rest of the concentrate. It takes all night. You work by candlelight, huddled over the tub. When the sun comes up, you have a pile of gold dust on the table. It glows softly. It is beautiful. It is the colour of the sun you missed all winter. You weigh it on the brass scale. 12 ounces. That's $16 an ounce. That's nearly $200. $200. You stare at it. You spent $1,000 to get here. You spent a year of your life. You starved. You froze. You nearly died in the rapids. You lived in a hole for $200. Sven sits down heavily. He puts his head in his hands. That's it? That's it, you say. We're on the edge of the pay streak. We missed the main channel. The gold was there. It was just 50 feet to the left, or 50 feet to the right, or maybe it was never there at all. Maybe the man who sold you the claim salted it with a shotgun shell full of gold dust. We're broke, Sven whispers. No, you say. We're alive, and we have enough to buy a ticket out. You divide the dust, 6 ounces each. It's enough for passage on a steamer, enough for a few meals in a restaurant, enough to get back to Seattle. You pack your bags. You leave the cabin. You leave the stove. You leave the shovels. You leave the hole in the ground. You walk back to Dawson. The trail is muddy, filled with men heading out to their claims, eyes bright with hope. They ask you how you did. Did all right, you say. You don't tell them the truth. You don't want to break their hearts. You reach the dock. The steamer Sarah is boarding. It's a paddle wheeler, white and gleaming. Smoke pours from its stack. You buy your ticket. You hand over the pouch of dust. The purser weighs it, nods, and hands you a paper slip. You walk up the gangplank. You find a spot on the deck. You lean against the railing. The whistle blows, a deep, mournful sound that echoes off the mountains. The paddle wheel starts to turn, churning the water. The boat pulls away. You watch Dawson City recede, the mud, the shacks, the smoke. It looks small now, insignificant. You survived. You survived the Chilkoot. You survived the rapids. You survived the long dark. You survived the scurvy. You survived the disappointment. You didn't get rich. You didn't find the motherlode. But as the wind hits your face, a warm wind smelling of pine and river water, you realize you found something else. You found out who you are when the lights go out. You found out what you're capable of enduring. You touch the scar on your cheek where the rock hit you. It will be there forever, a souvenir. You close your eyes. You listen to the rhythm of the boat. Thump splash, thump splash. It sounds like a heartbeat. You are going home. And you know with absolute certainty that you will never ever complain about a rainy day in Seattle again. Let's step back off the boat. Let's go back to the deep winter before the thaw, to a night you haven't lived yet. It is late December, the holiday season, though the words feel alien here. You are in the cabin. The wind has stopped, which is somehow worse than the howling. The silence is absolute. It is minus 60 degrees. The trees outside have stopped popping. They are frozen so solid they are like stone pillars. You're sitting by the stove, staring at a candle flame. It is your only source of light. Kerosene is too expensive to burn for anything but emergencies. The flame is small, yellow, and wavering. You find yourself mesmerized by it. You can stare at it for hours. Sven is asleep, or pretending to be. He hasn't spoken in 3 days. The cabin fever has mutated into a silent truce. You don't talk because if you talk, you might say something you can't take back. You might scream. You decide to check the trap line. It's a futile gesture. Nothing is moving in this cold. But it's something to do. It's a reason to put on the gear. Dressing takes 20 minutes. You have added a layer, strips of burlap sack wrapped around your boots to add insulation. You look like a mummy. You open the door and the cold rushes in like a physical presence, a ghost trying to claim the room. You step out into the twilight. It is noon, but the sun is just a faint glow behind the southern mountains. The aurora is active, though. Great ribbons of green and red light are pulsing overhead. The merry dancers, the old-timers call them. They look like spirits. You walk the line. The snow is hard, squeaking under your boots with a sound like styrofoam, rubbing together. Squeak, squeak. The first snare is empty. The second is buried. You dig it out. Empty. You reach the third snare near a frozen creek bed. It has been triggered. You hurry forward, hope flaring in your chest. A rabbit. A ptarmigan. You find a fox. An Arctic fox, small and white. It is dead, frozen solid in the shape of its last struggle. But it wasn't the snare that killed it. It has been eaten. Half of it is gone. Wolf tracks circle the snare. You stare at the tracks. They are fresh. The edges are sharp. The wolf was here recently. maybe an hour ago. You look up. The forest is silent, but you feel eyes on you. Wolves in the Klondike aren't like wolves elsewhere. They are desperate. They are smart. They know that humans mean food, or at least that humans leave food behind. They follow the trap lines. They rob you. You pull the remains of the fox from the wire. It's not much, just a scrap of fur and bone, but you take it. You can boil the bones for broth. You can use the fur to patch your mittens. Thief, you whisper to the trees. You turn back toward the cabin. The cold is seeping through your parka now. You can feel it in your shoulders, a dull ache. You walk faster. Then you hear it. A crack, not a branch. Ice. You're walking across the creek. You thought it was frozen solid to the bottom, but creeks in the Yukon have overflow, layers of water that get trapped between sheets of ice. When you step on the top layer, it breaks, plunging you into the water sandwiched below. Your right foot goes through. Icy slush floods your boot. It is instant agony. The water is super cooled, below freezing but still liquid. It hits your skin like acid. You yank your foot out. You scramble back to the bank. Panic. Real, primal panic. You have wet feet. In -60 weather. You have minutes, maybe 5, before your toes freeze, before the frostbite sets in deep, before you lose the foot. You can't make it back to the cabin. It's a mile away. You have to build a fire. Now. You drop your pack. You fumble for your matches. They're in a waterproof tin in your pocket. Your hands are shaking violently, partly from cold, partly from fear. You can't feel your fingers inside the thick mittens. You pull the mittens off. The air bites your exposed skin. You grab a handful of dry twigs from the base of a spruce tree, squaw wood, dead branches that snap easily. You pile them on a flat rock. You open the match tin. You take out a match. You try to strike it. Your thumb is numb. You fumble. The match falls into the snow. No, you whimper. No. You grab another. You strike it. It flares, then goes out in the wind. You have 3 matches left. You crouch over the pile of twigs, shielding it with your body. You put the match between your palms, rubbing them together to generate friction, to warm your fingers enough to grip. You strike the 3rd match. It lights. You hold it to a piece of birch bark you peeled from the tree. Birch bark burns even when wet. It curls, blackens, then catches. A small, yellow flame. You feed it twigs. Carefully. Don't smother it. The fire grows. You add larger sticks. The heat hits your face. You sit down in the snow. You pull off your boot. You pull off the soaked sock. Your foot is white, waxy. You can't feel it. You hold it near the fire. Not too close. You don't want to burn skin you can't feel. You massage it. You rub snow on it. No, wait, that's a myth. Don't rub snow, just warmth. Pain starts to return. A burning, prickling agony. It feels like your foot is on fire. You laugh. It's a hysterical sound. Pain is good. Pain means nerves are waking up. Pain means you keep the foot. You dry your sock over the fire, it steams. You dry the inside of your boot. You sit there for an hour, tending the fire, massaging your foot. The wolves are out there, watching. The cold is waiting, but you have fire. When your sock is dry, you put it back on. It's warm. You put on the boot. You stand up. You test your weight. It hurts, but it works. You kick snow over the fire to kill it. You don't want to start a forest fire even in winter. You walk back to the cabin. You limp slightly. When you open the door, Sven looks up. He sees your face. He sees the limp. Overflow? He asks. Overflow, you confirm. He nods. He gets up and pours you a cup of spruce tea. He adds a spoonful of sugar, a rare luxury. Drink, he says. You drink. You're alive. You have 10 toes. You look at the fox fur in your pocket. You survived the wolf. You survived the ice. But winter isn't over. The incident with the overflow changes something between you and Sven. The silence in the cabin shifts from hostile to something more like shared vigilance. You both know how close you came to losing a foot, or worse. The Klondike doesn't care if you're arguing, it just wants to kill you. A few days later, a visitor arrives. This is rare. In deep winter, travel is almost non-existent. You hear the jingle of dog bells first, then the crunch of sled runners. You open the door. A man is mushing a team of 6 huskies into your clearing. He is wrapped in furs so thick he looks like a bear walking on 2 legs. He halts the dogs. They collapse into the snow, panting, steam rising from their bodies. Coffee, the man croaks. His voice is wrecked, raspy. Come in, you say. The man enters. He He pulls back his hood. He is old, his beard white with frost, his face a map of deep wrinkles filled with soot. He smells of dog and campfires. "Name's Elias," he says, taking the cup Sven offers. "Mail carrier." Mail. The word is electric. You haven't heard from the outside world in months. "You have letters?" you ask. "For Dawson," he says. "I'm running the river route from Whitehorse. Stop to rest the dogs." He reaches into his heavy coat and pulls out a bundle of newspapers. These are a month old, but they're news. He tosses them on the table. You and Sven stare at them. The Seattle Post-Intelligencer, the San Francisco Examiner. You pick one up. The paper is brittle, cold. You read the headlines. War in Cuba, Spanish-American tensions. It feels like fiction. It feels like reading about a war on Mars. "What's happening out there?" Sven asks. "World's gone mad," Elias says, sipping the coffee loudly. "But gold is still $16 an ounce, so who cares?" He looks around your cabin. He sees the soot-stained walls, the dwindling woodpile, the tension. "First winter?" he asks. "Yeah," you say. "You're doing all right," he says. "You haven't killed each other yet." He gestures to a spot on the floor where the wood is darker. "Last cabin I stopped at. 2 partners. Found one froze in his bunk. Other one was gone. Took the gold, left the body." You look at Sven. Sven looks at the stove. "Gold does that," Elias says. "Makes men funny. Cold makes them funnier." He finishes his coffee. "I got to move. Dogs stiffen up if they stop too long." "Wait," you say. Can you take a letter?" "If it's written," he says. "And if you have $1. You scramble for paper. You have a precious notebook, the one you use to track expenses. You tear out a page. You grab a pencil stub. What do you write? "Dear Mother, I am cold. I am hungry. I live in a box. No." You write, "Dear Mother, I am well. The claim looks promising. The country is beautiful. I will be home soon." You fold it. You hand it to Elias with a pinch of gold dust. "It'll get there," he says. "Eventually." He leaves. You watch him mush the dogs back onto the river ice. The bells fade into the silence. You sit back down. You look at the newspaper. You read about the war. You read advertisements for patent medicines and corsets. You read about a world of softness, of heat, of trivial problems. It makes you angry. "They don't know," you whisper. "Don't know what?" Sven asks. "Any of this," you say, gesturing at the frosted window. "They think we're adventurers, heroes." "We're just digging holes," Sven says. That night, you read the newspaper cover to cover, you read the obituaries, you read the shipping news, you even read the classifieds. Lost dog, found spectacles, wanted. Clark. You laugh. A Clark. That was you. You cut the paper into strips. Not to save it, but to use it. Paper is insulation. You stuff the strips into the cracks around the window frame where the draft is worst. You line your boots with the editorial section. You are literally walking on the news of the world. The next week brings a new challenge. The stovepipe is clogged. It happens slowly. Smoke starts puffing back into the room every time the wind blows. Then it stops drawing completely. The fire dies down, choking on its own fumes. Creosote, Sven says, built up in the pipe. You have to clean it, but the pipe goes through the roof, and the roof is covered in 4 feet of snow. You have to go up there. You climb the ladder you built on, the side of the cabin. The roof is slippery, pitched at a steep angle to shed snow. You crawl up, digging your hands into the drifts. The wind up here is ferocious. It tries to blow you off. You reach the chimney pipe. It's hot to the touch, but the air around you is -40. You take a long stick with a rag tied to the end, your chimney sweep tool. You shove it down the pipe. You feel resistance. You push harder. Whoosh! A cloud of black soot shoots out of the top, coating your face, your parka, the snow. You cough, spitting black phlegm. Inside the cabin, Sven yells, "It's clear!" You slide back down the roof, landing in a snowbank. You look like a coal miner. You wipe your eyes. You go back inside. The stove is roaring again. The draft is pulling the smoke up and out. The heat is returning. You sit on the floor, covered in soot. You and Sven look at each other. You start to laugh. It's a rusty, jagged sound. Sven joins in. You laugh until your ribs hurt. You laugh because you cleaned a chimney in the Arctic. You laugh because you aren't dead. "We're a mess," Sven says, wiping tears from his dirty face. "We're miners," you correct him. And for the first time you actually feel like one. Not a clerk playing dress-up. A miner. A man who fixes his own stove, cures his own meat, and survives the long dark. You check the calendar tally on the wall. March is coming. The sun is staying up a little longer each day. Just a few minutes, but you notice it. The light is returning, and with the light, the work will change. The thaw is coming. But you aren't afraid of the mud anymore. You aren't afraid of the work. You've survived the silence. You've survived the cold. You are ready for the mud. March brings a new sound to the cabin. The wind changes pitch. It's no longer the low, steady moan of deep winter. It's higher, sharper, carrying moisture. The snow on the roof starts to settle, compressing under its own weight with heavy, periodic thuds that sound like footsteps. You're running low on candles. The darkness inside the cabin is no longer just an inconvenience. It's a resource crisis. You start rationing light. You light the candle only for cooking and for the few minutes of reading the tattered newspaper scraps before bed. The rest of the time, you move by the glow of the stove's draft vents. You become adept at navigating in the dark. You know exactly how many steps from the bunk to the table. You know where the water bucket is by the temperature drop in that corner. You know where Sven is by the sound of his breathing. But the darkness does something to your mind. It makes the boundaries between waking and sleeping porous. You have vivid, hallucination-like dreams. You dream of green fields. You dream of walking down a street in Seattle, but the pavement is made of gold bars and everyone is wearing masks. You dream of the wolf standing in the corner of the cabin watching you. One night, you wake up, convinced there is someone else in the room. "Who's there?" you whisper. Sven doesn't answer. He's snoring. You lie there, listening. You hear a scratching sound. Scritch. Scritch. It's coming from the food box. Mice. Or a squirrel. Or a weasel. Something is stealing your food. You get up, grabbing a piece of firewood as a club. You creep toward the box. You open the lid. Nothing. Just your sacks of flour and beans. But then you see it. A hole gnawed in the corner of the flour sack. A tiny trail of white powder leading to a crack in the floorboards. You feel a disproportionate rage. That flour is your life. That flour is your ticket home. And a rodent is eating it. You spend the next day building a trap. You use a heavy log and a trigger mechanism made of string and a bent nail. You bait it with a pinch of bacon fat. You catch it that night. A red squirrel. It's small, scrawny. You look at it. You should throw it outside. But protein is protein. You skin it. You add it to the pot. It's not much meat, but the broth tastes richer. "Good catch," Sven says, picking a bone clean. "Thief," you say. "He was a thief." You realize you're talking about a squirrel like it was a rival miner. The isolation is warping your sense of scale. Mid-March brings a visitor of a different kind. A raven. It lands on the roof of the cabin and starts calling. Caw, caw, quirk. It sounds like laughter. You go outside. The raven is massive, black as coal, its feathers iridescent in the weak sunlight. It looks at you with one intelligent eye. "What do you want?" you ask. It hops to the edge of the roof, looking down at the midden heap where you dump your ashen bones. "Go ahead," you say, "take it." The raven flies down, grabs a bone, and flies back to a tree. It watches you while it pecks at the marrow. You feel a strange kinship with the bird. It's a survivor. It stays here all winter, scavenging, watching, waiting. It doesn't complain. It just exists. "Smart bird," Sven says, coming out to dump the slop bucket. "Smarter than us," you say. "It has wings. It could leave." "Maybe it likes the view," Sven grunts. You look at the view. The valley is still white, but the snow has a different texture now. It's crusty, windblown. The trees are starting to shed their snow loads. The river ice is groaning more often. "The breakup is coming," you say. "Soon," Sven agrees. "Maybe a month, 4 weeks, 30 days. You check the wood pile. It's dangerously low. You've been burning the good wood, the seasoned spruce. Now you're down to the green wood you cut earlier in the winter. It hasn't dried enough. You try to burn it. It hisses. It smokes. It barely gives off heat. The cabin fills with a pungent, acrid smog that makes your eyes water and your throat close up. "We need dry wood," Sven coughs. "This is killing us." "There isn't any," you say. "We burned it all." "There's the cache," Sven says. He means the elevated. "Food cache you built outside to keep bears away from your summer supplies. It's made of sturdy poles and a platform. If we burn the cache, where do we put the food when the bears wake up?" "We'll be digging by then," Sven says. "We'll be too busy to worry about bears." It's a short-term solution, but you are living in the short term. You dismantle the cache. The wood is dry, seasoned by the wind. It burns beautifully. The heat returns, the smoke clears. You sit by the fire, warm for the first time in days. We're eating our house, you say. Better than eating each other, Sven says darkly. You look at him. It's a joke, probably. But you've heard the stories, the Donner Party, the lost expeditions. Hunger makes people do things they can't come back from. We're going to make it, you say firmly. We have beans, we have flour, we have wood. And we have gold, Sven adds. Maybe. The gold. The reason for all of this. You haven't thought about it much lately. It's buried under 20 feet of frozen mud. It's an abstract concept. But as the days lengthen, the gold starts to feel real again. You start planning the sluice box. You start drawing diagrams of water flow in the soot on the table. You are waking up. The hibernation is ending. One morning you hear a sound that stops your heart. A drip. Inside the cabin, you look up. A drop of water falls from the ceiling and lands on the table. Plip, the roof is leaking, the heat from the stove is melting the snow on the thatch from the underside. Leak, you shout. You scramble to move the bedding. You put a pot under the drip. Plip, plip, plip. It's annoying, it's messy, but it's also the most beautiful sound in the world. Water. Liquid water. The thaw has begun inside. Soon it will begin outside. You go to the door and open it. The air smells different. Damp. Heavy. It smells of ozone and pine needles thawing in the sun. You take a deep breath. It doesn't burn your lungs. Spring, you whisper. You turn back to Sven. He's smiling. A real smile showing his yellow teeth. We made it, he says. Not yet, you say. Now comes the mud. But you smile too. Because mud means water. Water means washing. Water means gold. You survive the darkness. You survive the cold. You survive the silence. You're ready for the noise of the river. The roof leak was just the herald. The true invasion begins 3 days later. You wake up not to the silence of snow, but to the sound of 1,000 tiny streams. The world outside is melting. You step out of the cabin and sink up to your knees in slush. It's heavy, wet snow that clings to your wool trousers like lead weights. The pristine white landscape is gone, replaced by a mottled grey and brown mess. The air is thick with moisture. Fog hangs low in the valley, obscuring the mountains. But the most dramatic change is the river. The Yukon River, which has been a solid highway of ice for 5 months, is waking up. You hear it before you see it. A deep, resonant groaning like a leviathan turning in its sleep. Crack. Boom. You walk down to the bank, careful not to slip on the mud slicked over the permafrost. The ice sheet is moving. Huge plates of ice, some as big as your cabin, are grinding against each other, buckling upwards, shattering. The pressure ridges are 10 feet high. Dark water churns in the gaps, black and violent. The break-up, Sven says, standing beside you. He's holding a shovel, just because. It's early. Early's good, you say. Means we can start washing sooner. Means the mud will be deeper, he counters. He's right. The ground, which was frozen solid and relatively easy to walk on, if you ignored the cold, is now turning into a bog. Every step is a struggle. The mud sucks at your boots, trying to pull them off your feet. It gets everywhere. It's in your cabin, tracked in on your clothes. It's in your bed. It's probably in your food. You go back to the mine shaft. It's a disaster. The shaft is flooding. The meltwater from the surface is pouring down the hole you spent all winter digging. No! You shout, running to the edge. You look down. There's 3 feet of water at the bottom of the drift. The fire pit is drowned. The tools are submerged. We have to bail it, Sven says, grabbing a bucket. You spend the next 2 days fighting the water. You rig up a windlass system to hoist the water out bucket by bucket. It's backbreaking work. You haul a bucket up, dump it, lower it back down. Repeat. For 10 hours straight. You are soaked. The water is freezing, barely above 32 degrees. Your hands are numb, white and wrinkled, but you can't stop. If the water rises too high, it will freeze again at night and expand, potentially collapsing the shaft walls. You have to keep the water level down until the ground thaws enough to dig drainage trenches. Why are we doing this, you gasp, leaning against the windlass frame, your chest heaving. Because the gold is down there, Sven grunts, dumping another load of muddy water. The gold. It's the only reason. It's the only thing that makes sense of this misery. By the 3rd day, you have the water under control. You dig a trench around the mouth of the shaft to divert the surface runoff. It works. The water level stabilizes. Now comes the construction phase. You need a sluice box. You need a way to get water from the creek, which is now flowing, to the box. You go back to the forest. The trees are dripping. The snow is patchy, revealing sodden moss and dead needles. You fell trees. The wood is wet, heavy with sap. It smells sharp and green. You whipsaw the logs again. It's harder now because the wood is wet and binds the saw blade. You and Sven argue constantly. "Pull straight," you yell. "I am pulling straight. You're pushing too hard." You're both exhausted, irritable and hungry. The fresh meat is gone. You're back to beans and flour. But you keep sawing. Planks pile up. You build the sluice. It's a masterpiece of crude engineering. A long wooden trough set on trestles with a head box at the top to catch the water and a tail race at the bottom to dump the waste. You line the bottom with riffles, wooden slats you carve by hand during the long winter nights. You install it in the creek. You build a dam using rocks, logs and moss to raise the water level. You dig a ditch to channel the water into the head box. When you open the gate, the water rushes in. It hits the riffles, creating little eddies and whirlpools. "It works," Sven says, watching the water flow. "Now we fill it," you say. You look at the dump pile, the mountain of frozen dirt you dug all winter. It's starting to thaw on the outside, turning dark and soft. You grab your shovel. Sven grabs his. "Ready? Ready?" You throw the first shovel load into the box. The water grabs it, breaking up the clods, washing the gravel down the trough. The mud turns the water brown. You throw another, and another. This is the cleanup, the moment of truth. You work for 12 hours. Shovel, lift, throw. Shovel, lift, throw. Your rhythm is mechanical. You don't look at the box, you don't look for gold, you just move dirt. At noon, you stop for a break. You eat a piece of bannock bread with dirty hands. You drink creek water. "Think there's anything in there?" Sven asks, nodding at the sluice. "We'll know tonight," you say. The sun starts to dip. The air cools, the mud begins to stiffen. "Shut it down," you say. Sven blocks the water. The flow in the box slows to a trickle, then stops. The riffles are packed with black sand. Heavy sand, iron sand. You bring the gold pan. You start to scoop out the concentrate. You take it to the tub. You start to wash. Sven holds the lantern. His hand is shaking. You swirl the water. The black sand moves, and there it is, yellow. More than before. Much more. A thick line of gold dust at the edge of the black sand, and nuggets. Small ones the size of rice grains, but heavy. They clink against the metal pan. "Gold," Sven whispers. You stare at it. It's beautiful. It's terrifying. You wash the rest of the concentrate. By midnight you have a pouch that is heavy, substantial. You weigh it. 4 pounds. 4 pounds of gold. At $16 an ounce, that's $1,000 in one day. You look at Sven. He looks at you. "We're rich," he says. "We're not rich yet," you say. "That pile is huge. If the rest of it is like this, you're going home with a fortune." You don't sleep that night. You sit by the stove guarding the pouch. You listen to the river. You listen to the wind. But the sound you hear is the sound of the shovel hitting the dirt. It's the sound of the water in the box. It's the sound of your life changing. You survived the winter. You survived the hunger. Now, you have to survive the success. Because gold changes people. It brings out the wolves. And the wolves aren't just in the forest anymore. They are in town. They are on the trail. They are everywhere. The next few weeks are a blur of mud, water and gold. The routine changes. You don't mine anymore, you harvest. You shovel the winter dump pile into the sluice box day after day, watching the mountain of dirt shrink and the leather pouch grow heavy. But success brings a new kind of tension. The gold fever isn't just a metaphor, it's a social disease. Miners from nearby claim start stopping by. They pretend to be friendly, asking about the weather, about the water levels, but their eyes are always moving, scanning your sluice box, checking the weight of your cleanup pan. "Doing all right?" a man named Miller asks one afternoon. He's leaning on a shovel, watching you work. He looks thin, desperate. His own claim, 2 miles upstream, turned out to be a dud. "Getting by," you say, not stopping your shovel rhythm. "Just getting by." "Looks like more than getting by in that riffle," Miller says, pointing. You stop. You look him in the eye. "It pays the bills, Miller, that's all." He nods slowly, but he doesn't leave. He lingers. He watches. That night, you and Sven take turns sleeping. One of you stays awake, a loaded shotgun across your knees. You aren't protecting yourself from bears anymore. You're protecting yourself from your neighbours. The gold is a burden. It's heavy physical weight that you have to hide. You can't leave it in the cabin. It's too obvious. You bury it. Every night you dig a hole under the floorboards, put the pouch in a metal tin, and bury it. Then you move the table back over the spot. You stop going to town. You don't want to spend the gold. You don't want people to see you spending it. You eat beans and flour even though you could afford steak and eggs. You become a miser, hoarding your treasure in a muddy hole. Sven is changing too. He's quieter. He watches you when you think he isn't looking. You catch him counting the gold when it's supposed to be buried. "We should split it now," he says one evening. "Half and half, keep our own shares." "Why?" you ask. "We're partners. We split it at the end." "What if something happens?" he says. "What if one of us leaves? Or dies?" "Fine," you say. "We split it." You divide the dust. You use the brass scale, measuring down to the grain. It takes hours. When it's done, you each have your own pouch. You sleep with yours under your pillow. He sleeps with his in his boot. The trust is gone. The cabin feels smaller than ever. Then the rain starts. It's not a spring shower. It's a deluge. The sky opens up and dumps water on the valley for 3 days straight. The creek rises. It turns from a babbling brook into a raging torrent of brown water. "The dam!" you shout. You run out into the rain. The dam you built to divert water into the sluice is buckling. The pressure is too high. Water is spilling over the top, eroding the mud walls. "Sandbags!" Sven yells. You fill sacks with wet dirt. You pile them on the dam. The rain is blinding. The water is freezing. You work until your hands are raw, but it's not enough. With a groan of timber, the dam breaks. The wall of water hits the sluice box. It rips the wooden trough from its trestles. It smashes it against a rock. "No!" you scream. You watch as your sluice box, the machine that makes you rich, disintegrates. Planks fly downstream. The riffles are washed away. And the gold that was trapped in the box from the morning's run, gone, washed back into the creek, buried under tons of new silt. You stand in the rain, water streaming down your face. Sven is on his knees in the mud, cursing the sky. The work of 3 days destroyed in 3 seconds. You trudge back to the cabin. You are soaked. You're defeated. "We can rebuild it," Sven says, his voice hollow. "With what?" you ask. "We used all the lumber. We have to cut more trees, saw more planks. It means starting over. It means another week of backbreaking labour before you can process another ounce of dirt." You sit by the stove, drying your clothes. You feel a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. This land fights you. It fights you every step of the way. It gives you a little, then takes it back. You look at your pouch of gold. It's heavy. It's enough. "I'm done," you whisper. Sven looks at you. "What?" "I'm done. I have enough. I'm not building another box. I'm not fighting the river anymore." "There's still dirt in the pile," Sven says. "Thousands of dollars worth." "You can have it," you say. "You can have my share of the dirt. I'm taking my gold and I'm going home." Sven stares at you. He looks at the gold. He looks at the rain outside. "You're quitting?" "I'm surviving," you say. "There's a difference." You pack your bag. You take your gold. You take your clothes. You leave the shovel. You leave the pick. "Good luck, Sven," you say. He doesn't answer. He just watches you go. You walk out into the rain. The mud is deep, sucking at your boots. But you don't care. You are leaving. You walk the 3 miles to Dawson. You go straight to the steamship office. "Ticket to Seattle," you say. "First class." The clerk looks at you. You're covered in mud. You smell like a wet dog. You look like a wild man. "That'll be $300, he says, sneering slightly. You pull out your pouch. You pour a stream of gold dust onto the counter. The clerk's eyes widen. His attitude changes instantly. "Right away, sir," he says. You take your ticket. It feels light, fragile. A piece of paper that promises escape. You walk to the hotel. You rent a room. A real room with a bed that has sheets. You order a bath, hot water, soap. You sit in the tub watching the dirt swirl away. You scrub your skin until it's red. You shave your beard. You look in the mirror. The face staring back is older. The eyes are harder. There is a scar on your cheek. You're 25 years old, but you look 40. You go to dinner. You order a steak. You order potatoes. You order an orange. The orange arrives on a silver platter. It is bright, round, perfect. You peel it slowly. The smell of citrus fills the air, cutting through the smell of smoke and mud. You eat a slice. It is sweet, acidic, shocking. It tastes like life. You sit back in your chair. You listen to the piano player in the corner. He's playing a ragtime tune, fast and happy. You are safe. You are rich. You are going home. But as you look out the window at the muddy street, at the men trudging through the rain, you feel a strange pang. You're leaving Sven. You're leaving the cabin. You're leaving the fight. Part of you, the part that survived the winter, the part that held the spear against the boar, wants to stay, wants to see it through. But the clerk from Seattle, the one who just wanted to be warm, he's smiling. You finish your orange, you drink your wine, you sleep in a bed with sheets, you dream of snow, but you don't wake up shivering. The next morning, the steamer whistle blows. You walk down the gangplank, you step onto the deck. The boat pulls away. The current catches it, turning it downstream. You watch Dawson City fade into the mist. The mud, the tents, the dreams. You made it. You survived the Klondike. And as the boat picks up speed, heading for the open sea, you close your eyes and let the rhythm of the river carry you away. Let's not end it on the boat just yet. The journey home is a story in itself. It's the decompression chamber. You're on the Sarah, a stern wheeler fighting the current upstream to Whitehorse. Then you'll take the train, the newly built White Pass and Yukon route, back to Skagway. The boat is crowded, but it's a different kind of crowd. These are the winners, men with heavy pokes of gold, men who are drinking champagne at breakfast. But there are also the losers, men with empty pockets and haunted eyes, working their passage by stacking wood for the boilers. You sit on the deck wrapped in a blanket, watching the Yukon riverbanks slide by. The landscape is green now, exploding with summer life. Fireweed blooms in pink slashes across the hills. Bears prowl the shorelines, fishing for salmon. It looks peaceful. But you know what lies beneath that green. You know the cold that is waiting in the earth. You talk to a man next to you. His name is Thomas. He was a banker in Chicago. He lost 2 toes to frostbite. He has a jar of gold dust worth $5,000. Was it worth it? You ask him. He looks at his missing toes, hidden inside his boots. He looks at the gold. I don't know, he says. I lost my wife. She left me while I was up here. Said I was chasing ghosts. I lost my job, you say, and my house. But we have the gold, Thomas says, patting his pocket. That fixes everything, right? Right, you say, but you don't believe it. You reach Whitehorse. You board the train. The train is a miracle. It climbs the mountains you walked over. You look out the window and see the Chilkoot Pass in the distance, the golden stairs. It looks small from here, a white scar on the rock. You remember the pain, the mud, the man who died from the falling rock. You're sitting on velvet seats, drinking coffee, moving at 20 miles an hour. It feels like cheating. You reach Skagway. The town has changed. It's more permanent now. There are brick buildings. There are sidewalks. Soapy Smith is dead, killed in a shootout. The chaos has been tamed. You board the ocean liner for Seattle, the Queen of the Pacific. The ocean voyage is smooth. You stand at the rail, watching the coastline of Alaska fade. The glaciers, the peaks, the endless forests. You arrive in Seattle. The city is loud, crowded, modern. Electric streetcars, paved roads, people in suits who smell of soap and perfume. You step off the boat. You feel dizzy. The noise is overwhelming. You walk to a bank. You deposit your gold. The teller looks at you with awe. Klondike? He asks. Klondike, you confirm. He counts it out. You have enough money to buy a house, a business, a life. You walk out onto the street. You buy a newspaper. You sit on a bench. You're safe. You're rich. But as you watch the people rushing by, worried about their appointments, their schedules, their petty problems, you realize something. You're different. You're not one of them anymore. You know what it's like to starve. You know what it's like to freeze. You know what it's like to kill a boar with a spear. You have a secret strength, a cold, hard core that the winter forged inside you. You fold the newspaper. You look at the sun. You survived. And now you can rest. Now, allow the images of the gold rush to fade gently from your mind. The mud, the cold, the struggle, let them drift away like mist over the river. You're back in your own time, in your own bed. The air around you is perfectly still. The temperature is just right. You're supported, comfortable, safe. Imagine you are lying in a meadow in a high summer. The grass is soft and warm beneath you. The sun is shining, bathing you in a gentle golden light. Breathe in. The air smells of wildflowers and warm earth. Breathe out. Release the tension in your legs, the muscles that climbed the mountain. Release the tension in your hands. the fingers that gripped the pickaxe. You are heavy. You are relaxed. Listen to the sound of a stream nearby. It is not a frozen creek. It is a bubbling, happy brook flowing over smooth stones. Burble, splash, hiss. It is the sound of peace. Your journey is over. You have nothing to carry. No pack, no weight. Just you, resting. Let your mind float. Like a leaf on the water. Drifting slowly, lazily downstream. There is no destination. Only now. Only this quiet moment. Sleep is coming. It is a warm, welcoming darkness. Let go. Good night.